Have you ever thought you knew someone? Really knew? What would you do if the man you loved, the father of your unborn child, was out whining and dining another woman? Not at some cheap hidden spot, but at one of the most exclusive restaurants in all of M. Would you scream? Run? Or would you walk in, pregnant and proud, hand in hand with a man even more powerful than your husband, then calmly let the world watch as everything? Because that's exactly what she did. Aria Monroe was supposed to be just another quiet, forgotten wife, 6 months pregnant, waiting at home, swallowed by silence. But that night, she walked into Maison d'Etoile, a place where only billionaires and power players eat, and changed everything. And here's the part no one saw coming. The man by her side. He was the billionaire who bought the on. Why? To show her she wasn't alone, that she still had power, that she didn't need to fight fire with fire when she was the fire. So let me ask you this, when betrayal breaks you, who will you become? Because for Aria, heartbreak didn't destroy her, it awakened her. And trust me, by the end of this story, you'll never look at silence the same way again. Tonight, the man of the moment was Samuel Grant, tech millionaire, media darling, and husband. He was seated at a secluded corner table dressed in his usual arrogance, a navy Tom Ford suit, gold cufflinks engraved with his initials, and a smirk that had bought him everything in life, except loyalty. Across from him sat a woman the tabloids only whispered about. Delilah Vaughn. She was the kind of beauty that made headlines and homewreckers. A rising influencer with legs longer than her resume and a voice that sounded like smoke. She laughed loudly at something Samuel said, tossing her hair back like a weapon. Samuel leaned closer. You know, sometimes I forget I'm married, he whispered, brushing her hand. Delilah's red lips curled, then forget it again and again. Around them, music swelled softly, violins playing something expensive, crystal glasses clinked, waiters glided like ghosts, every inch of the place breathed money, secrecy, and sin. And then, everything stopped. The entrance doors opened and silence fell like glass shattering. She walked in, Aria Monroe, 6 months pregnant, standing tall in an emerald green gown that hugged her body like it had been stitched onto her skin. Her hair flowed in soft, dark curls. Her face wasn't painted in vengeance, it was vengeance. Elegant, dangerous, and unmistakably his wife. The baby bump wasn't the only shocking thing about her. It was the man beside her. Elias Knight. The billionaire no one ever saw. The one who made and broke companies with a single sentence. Who had more offshore accounts than most had shoes. And now, he was walking beside Aria like she was made of gold. Samuel went pale. Delilah blinked. Wait, who? My wife, Samuel murmured, his voice dry as dust. Delilah sat back. She's your wife? Every camera in the room turned toward Aria. Every phone slid out from under designer purses. Every whisper turned into a tidal wave. Aria didn't flinch. She locked eyes with Samuel across the room. Not fear, not sadness. Just cold, surgical silence. The silence of a woman who had cried her last tear. She turned to Elias, who offered his arm. She took it. They walked forward toward Samuel's table. Every step echoed like thunder across the marble floor. The maitre d', confused but too well trained to interfere, stepped back. Samuel stood abruptly. Aria, what are you? She raised her hand. Don't. That one word shut him up. She turned to Delilah, who had the audacity to look amused. You wore red, Aria said, calm as still water. How predictable. Delilah laughed, trying to regain control. Well, I had no idea he was still married. You're clearly glowing, though. Must be the hormones. Elias stepped forward, but Aria placed a hand on his chest. She's not worth it. Then Aria looked at Samuel, really looked at him. I came here tonight not because I care, she said, her voice rising just enough to carry, but because I wanted you to see what power really looks like. Samuel's jaw tightened. What the hell is that supposed to mean? Elias answered for her. I bought this place, he said simply. Gasps rippled through the room. You what? Samuel spat. I closed the deal an hour ago, Elias added, placing a thick folder on the table. Your little rendezvous just became trespassing. Samuel's face twisted. You've got to be joking. Do I look like I joke? Aria smiled for the first time. This isn't about love, Samuel, it's about leverage. You had your fun, but now, this restaurant, this night, this moment, it's mine. Delilah stood, grabbing her clutch. This is insane. No, Aria replied, this is closure. She turned, her gown sweeping behind her like the final act of a tragedy. Elias offered his hand. She took it. As they exited through the same doors she once entered as a wife, the entire room stayed frozen. Cameras still rolling, mouths still open, glasses still half lifted. Samuel Grant sat down slowly, staring at the folder Elias had left behind. The headline tomorrow? Pregnant wife interrupts millionaire's date and walks out with the billionaire who just bought the place. Aria Monroe wasn't born into power. She built it, silently, stubbornly, and from scratch. At 29, she had already lived many lives. The daughter of a struggling single mother in upstate New York, the teenage prodigy who turned school lunches into gourmet feasts, the culinary graduate with fire in her hands and scars on her soul, and most recently, the wife who had everything. Until the man she trusted shattered it. She hadn't always looked the way she did the night she walked into Maison de Toile. No, that version of her, glowing, composed, lethal, was a product of pain. She had once been soft, open, romantic, and that softness had nearly destroyed her. At 18, Aria received a full-ride scholarship to the Culinary Institute of America. Her mother cried the day she left, squeezing her daughter's hands and whispering, "Don't let anyone tell you your fire is too much." Aria didn't. She poured herself into her craft, mastering everything from French sauces to Japanese precision. Her dishes didn't just feed people, they moved them. Food was her voice when words failed. By 23, she was running the kitchen at a boutique Manhattan restaurant. That's where she met Samuel Grant. He came in late one night with a business partner, trying to close a startup funding deal. She didn't know who he was, only that he sent back his risotto 3 times. Aria, exhausted and irritated, finally stormed out of the kitchen herself to ask him what exactly his genius palate thought was missing. He had laughed. I think you're what's missing." She'd rolled her eyes, but he left her a tip bigger than her monthly rent. 2 weeks later, he returned. This time, alone. Then again. He was charming in that disarming, arrogant way. He talked about his tech company like it was a revolution. He made promises about dreams, about investing in her own restaurant, about a life where they built everything together. Aria wasn't naive, but she was hopeful. By 25, she was in love. By 26, married. At first, things felt like a fairy tale. Samuel rented out a rooftop garden in Tribeca to propose. He designed a custom ring with a diamond shaped like a flame, because he said she was pure fire. He supported her opening her own restaurant, Ember, which quickly gained critical buzz. Not Michelin stars, but close. They were a power couple, New York's culinary queen and tech's rising god. Photos of them kissing in aprons or hosting charity events appeared in magazines. People envied her. And Aria, for a time, believed she had it all. Then came the cracks. They started small. Samuel began canceling dinner plans. She'd come home to find him buried in his laptop or gone altogether. He started talking more about IPOs and venture capital than about dreams. When she mentioned wanting a second restaurant, he nodded but never followed up. At 27, Aria miscarried, alone. Samuel had been in Tokyo for a conference. He sent flowers and a text. That night, Aria sat on the kitchen floor of their penthouse, bloodied and empty, whispering lullabies to a child that never came. Everything changed after that. They stopped laughing, stopped touching. Aria threw herself into cooking again, while Samuel vanished deeper into deals and dinners. She got pregnant again at 28. This time Samuel was around, or so she thought. He attended doctor visits, posted photos, even announced it to his followers. But behind closed doors, he was colder. Distant. Restless. And then came Delilah. Aria didn't need a private investigator. She had instinct. She'd seen the change in his eyes, the deleted texts, the way he suddenly started caring about image again. The night she found the receipt from Maison de Toile was the last straw. But here's what Samuel didn't know. Aria was never just a chef. Before she met Samuel, Aria had entered a little-known cooking competition, one with a secretive billionaire patron named Elias Knight. He had tasted her food, looked her in the eye, and told her, "If you ever need a favor, I owe you one. Big time." She never called in that favor, until now. The day she confirmed the affair, she sent one text, "I'm cashing it in." Elias responded with a time and a location. He didn't ask why. 3 days later, she walked into Maison de Toile on Elias Knight's arm, not just for revenge, but for something deeper. Reclamation. The Aria Monroe who had once wept in silence no longer existed. The woman standing in that restaurant wasn't looking for an apology. She was a mother in waiting. A phoenix reborn. She didn't just want Samuel to see what he lost. She wanted the world to watch her rise. Maison d'Etoile wasn't just a restaurant, it was a performance. Tucked behind a discreet marble archway on Manhattan's Upper East Side, it had no sign, no phone number, and no open reservations. The waiting list was months long unless you were someone who made headlines when you sneezed. For the elite, it wasn't just a place to eat, it was a sanctuary, a palace of privacy where secrets were served with every course and reputations could be made or destroyed over dessert. The interior was designed by a French architect flown in from Paris, rumored to be paid in diamonds. Velvet booths lined the outer edges in deep sapphire, while the center floor was open for the spotlight tables. Small, candlelit circles meant for power couples and political scandals. The chandeliers weren't just chandeliers, they were pieces of history. One belonged to a former royal palace. The other had once hung in a private opera house in Vienna. When the lights dimmed, their crystals threw fragmented rainbows across the marble floors. The air always smelled faintly of white truffle and old money. This was where millionaires came to be seen, and billionaires came to disappear. The maître d', Laurent, had a face carved from stone and a memory like a vault. He knew which senator liked to sit far from the kitchen, which tech mogul insisted on having his steak sliced by the chef himself, and which famous actress paid extra to have a specific kind of Himalayan salt on the table before she even arrived. It was the kind of place where the sound of clinking glasses meant more than words, where eye contact could ruin a marriage, where the wrong smile could be worth a lawsuit, and tonight the air buzzed with something electric. The 8 p.m. slot was always the most prestigious. Samuel Grant had requested table 9, center of the room, back to the wall, full view of the door. A power move. He wanted to be seen, but not approached, admired, but untouchable. He arrived early, checking his reflection in the bathroom's gold-framed mirror. He adjusted his cufflinks twice. Samuel had done this before. Dinners, deals, discreet affairs. Maison d'Etoile had always been his safe haven, a place where no one questioned his choices as long as he tipped generously. His mistress, Delilah Vaughn, arrived 10 minutes later. Delilah belonged in this setting. She wore a dress that shimmered like champagne in low light, a slit running high enough to turn heads without raising eyebrows. Her perfume hit before her heels did, jasmine and danger. People noticed. They always did. From across the room, a hedge fund manager nudged his wife. 2 fashion editors whispered into their wine. A Hollywood producer narrowed his eyes. They all knew Samuel was married, and they all knew that wasn't his wife. But no one said a word. Because this was Maison d'Etoile. Silence was part of the service. Laurent greeted Delilah with a cool nod. "Miss Vaughn," he said, though he had never officially been introduced. He escorted her to the table as if she were royalty. She sat, crossed her legs, and reached for the menu she would never truly look at. Samuel smirked, pleased. The wine arrived first, then oysters, imported from a secret coast in France, then duck confit with black garlic glaze. Every plate was art. Every bite was indulgence. They toasted to fresh starts. Samuel leaned back in his chair, watching Delilah as she laughed too loudly. She was young, fun, and reckless, the exact opposite of Arya. No lectures, no expectations, no inconvenient emotions. He didn't notice the shift in the room until it was too late. The chatter quieted. Forks paused mid-air. Even the violinists slowed. Samuel turned toward the entrance. And time broke. Arya Monroe had arrived. She didn't belong to this world, not anymore, but she owned it in that moment. Her dress caught the chandelier light and threw it back like fire. Her baby bump was proudly on display, not hidden, not ashamed. And beside her stood Elias Knight, the man Samuel had spent years trying and failing to impress. Elias in Maison d'Etoile was like a storm entering a chapel. Samuel's mind spun. Why is he here? Why is she with him? Delilah leaned closer. Wait, is that your? Yes, Samuel whispered. That's my wife. Every single person in the restaurant was watching now, but pretending not to. It was the unspoken rule. Pretend to ignore the chaos so you could describe it in detail later. Arya didn't walk. She glided, confident, composed, dangerous. She didn't need to raise her voice. The silence bent for her. The maitre stepped forward. Miss Monroe? Mr. Knight? Will only be a moment, Elias said, voice smooth as silk but edged in warning. They approached Samuel's table, and the restaurant, with all its marble, gold, and history became a stage. Samuel Grant had always believed he was the smartest man in any room. That belief had carried him from a dusty basement startup to the glittering heights of New York's tech elite. He wore confidence like armor, wielded charm like a blade, and treated loyalty like currency. When he married Aria Monroe, he didn't think he was marrying a person. He thought he was acquiring a future asset. He had no idea she would become his reckoning. From the moment she walked into Maison d'Etoile with Elias Knight, Samuel's stomach had twisted into a knot he couldn't hide. His jaw clenched, but he tried to maintain composure. Eyes from every table were slicing through him now, some curious, some amused, and a few downright gleeful. Delilah Vaughn, sitting beside him in her shimmering gown, noticed the shift immediately. Her red lips parted. "That's your wife?" Samuel didn't answer. He didn't need to. Delilah narrowed her eyes. "She's pregnant. You didn't say anything about her being pregnant." He turned toward her. "This isn't the time." "No," she hissed under her breath. "This was supposed to be our night." Delilah had never liked being second. She grew up in a world where being the center of attention wasn't a desire, it was survival. She'd clawed her way up from an overlit childhood pageant circuit to a curated Instagram empire with millions of followers and brand deals stretching across continents. She had chosen Samuel, no, not for his looks or even his charm, but for his status. He was a stepping stone, a shortcut to billionaire circles. But now, staring at Aria, regal, pregnant, and standing beside a man more powerful than Samuel could ever be, Delilah realized she had miscalculated. Badly. Elias Knight didn't even glance at her. He looked at Samuel with a coldness that felt like a verdict. And Aria? She didn't look angry. That was worse. She looked resolved. Delilah crossed her arms, her voice dripping with venom. "I guess this explains why you never brought me to public events. You were scared she'd show up with someone better." Samuel barely heard her. He was focused on Aria. "What is this? What game are you playing?" Aria's gaze didn't waver. "No game, Samuel. I'm just done pretending." He stood abruptly, knocking over his wine glass. Red spilled across the white tablecloth like blood. The noise made a few nearby diners jump. He didn't care. "Are you trying to humiliate me?" he snapped. Aria's voice was calm. "You did that all by yourself." Delilah scoffed. "This is pathetic. She's obviously trying to make a scene. Showing up with Elias Knight? That's not an accident. She's using him for revenge." Elias finally spoke. "I don't do revenge, Miss Vaughn. I do justice." Delilah blinked. Samuel's hands curled into fists. "You're making a mistake, Aria. You think this is going to end well for you?" Aria stepped closer. "The mistake was thinking I needed you." Samuel laughed, bitter and sharp. "You're nothing without me. You were a chef in a rented kitchen. I gave you ember. I gave you visibility." Aria smiled faintly. "You gave me a kitchen. I built the fire." Elias reached into his jacket and slid a small, gold-edged envelope onto the table. "This is a list of your restaurant's current investors." Samuel stared. "What? They're no longer yours," Elias said. "I made them a better offer." His voice was low, almost gentle. But the impact was seismic. Delilah's eyes widened. "Wait, what are you talking about?" Aria leaned forward, her words soft but cutting. "He bought you out, quietly. Over the past 6 weeks, every time you left early, every night you were with her? He was working." Samuel's mouth opened, but nothing came out. "You always said business was your mistress," Aria continued. "So I gave your mistress what she wanted, full custody. You don't own anything anymore, Samuel. Not Ember, not this table, not me." Delilah stood up, her heels scraping the marble. "This is insane. I didn't sign up for some Shakespearean breakdown." "No," Aria said. "You signed up for someone else's husband." Delilah's jaw clenched. She turned to Samuel, lips twitching. "You told me she was fragile, that she couldn't handle pressure." Samuel stared at Aria, as if seeing her for the first time. Delilah grabbed her purse. "Enjoy the fallout, both of you." She stormed off, the room watching in silence. Samuel sank back into his chair, color draining from his face. Elias picked up the wine-stained napkin and calmly set it aside. "This was never about her," Elias said. "It was about you, and the choices you made." Samuel looked at Aria, his voice cracking. "You really did all this behind my back?" She nodded. "Just like you did everything behind mine." A waiter appeared silently, as if summoned by the drama itself. He cleared the table without a word, only nodding respectfully toward Elias and Aria. Samuel looked around, Suddenly very small in a room he once dominated, the matron returned. "Mr. Grant," he said smoothly, "your bill has been taken care of, by Mr. Knight." Samuel blinked. "Why?" Laurent's smile was razor thin. "Because he owns the restaurant now." And with that, Elias stood. Arya took his arm. As they walked out, the whispers grew louder, and Samuel Grant sat alone. No mistress, no marriage, no empire, just the bitter taste of consequences. The moment Arya and Elias exited the restaurant, a different kind of silence settled across Maison de Toile. Thicker, heavier, and humming with unsaid words. The kind of silence that only came after a storm had ripped through, leaving shattered reputations and overturned empires in its wake. Samuel Grant remained seated, staring at the half-drunk glass of ruined wine, its contents bleeding across the crisp tablecloth like a wound. For the first time in his career, his carefully curated image, the genius entrepreneur, the successful husband, the untouchable mogul, was cracked wide open. And everyone saw it. Because this wasn't just an awkward moment. This was a massacre in silk suits and stilettos. In a room full of his peers, partners, and potential investors, Samuel had been reduced to a cautionary tale. The man who brought his mistress to a five-star dinner only to be publicly dismantled by his pregnant wife and the billionaire she now walked beside. At table 4, a board member from one of Samuel's former investor groups murmured, "Did you hear what Knight said? He bought out Ember." Quietly. "That's cold." Table 6 laughed quietly. She didn't even raise her voice. That's how you know she was done. Table 11? Filming. It wouldn't take long. By morning, the footage would be clipped, stitched, and blasted across every social media platform. Wife confronts cheating millionaire with billionaire by her side, at dinner with his mistress. Hashtags would trend. Think pieces would follow. Samuel knew all of this as he sat there, sinking deeper into a chair that once felt like a throne. Delilah's empty seat beside him made the image worse. A woman's purse still sat on the cushion, a lipstick stain on the napkin. Her departure had been loud enough to echo across Manhattan's gossip circuit before the dessert even hit the tables. Laurent approached discreetly, clearing away the mess. "Will you be needing anything else tonight, Mr. Grant?" Samuel didn't respond. Not because he didn't want to, but because he didn't know how. The maitre d' gave a subtle nod. "Very well. A car will be ready when you are." As Laurent walked away, Samuel finally exhaled. His phone buzzed on the table. 2 messages. One from his CFO, "What the hell is this about Elias Knight? Is it true?" And another from his lawyer, "Arya has filed. Check your email. It's already been served." Served? The irony stung. He looked around. The crowd had resumed eating, drinking, laughing. But now, no one looked at him. They looked through him. He was no longer the star of the room. He was the punchline. And yet none of it hurt as much as watching Arya leave. He had underestimated her, spectacularly. He thought she was too soft, too emotional. He thought her love for him made her weak. He thought being pregnant meant she wouldn't fight back. But what Samuel never understood was this. Pregnancy didn't weaken Arya Monroe. It sharpened her. She didn't just want revenge. She wanted liberation. And she got it. Under every chandelier and over every glass of $1,000 wine. Outside, flashbulbs exploded. Paparazzi had caught wind of Elias Knight's appearance. Photos would circulate by sunrise, Arya in emerald green, pregnant and poised. Elias beside her like a silent protector. The shot would become iconic. Inside, Samuel still sat. Delilah's words rang in his ears. "She's obviously trying to make a scene." No, she hadn't made a scene. She had staged a revolution. And everyone applauded. Not openly, of course. Not yet. But as the waitstaff whispered behind their trays and the investors whispered behind their menus, one fact became clear. Samuel Grant was no longer a safe bet. Elias Knight was. Arya Monroe was. Even in her silence, she delivered a message louder than anything Samuel could have said. "I don't need to scream to be heard. I'll just dismantle you calmly, with witnesses." Somewhere across the room, someone raised a glass. "To karma," they whispered. Others laughed. By the time Samuel rose from the table, the damage was done. His ego wasn't just bruised, it was shattered. And the worst part? He had no one to blame but himself. He walked out of Maison de Toile through a side entrance, avoiding the cameras, avoiding the shame. But shame doesn't need a spotlight. It follows you like a shadow. And Samuel Grant, once the man everyone envied, now walked under a spotlight that no longer admired him. It exposed him. The moment Arya stepped out of the spotlight and into the back of Elias Knight's waiting car, her armor began to crack. The emerald gown that made her look invincible felt suddenly tight. The heels that had carried her through one of the most brutal moments of her life now pinched like punishment. The adrenaline that had kept her spine straight and voice steady began to drain. She exhaled slowly, her hand resting on her belly. The baby kicked. Still here. Still strong. Still hers. Elias sat beside her in silence, respecting her quiet. The car moved smoothly through Manhattan's nighttime grid, the city glowing around them, indifferent, glittering, alive. But inside Arya's chest, silence and pain. Not rage anymore. Not the searing betrayal that had carried her into Maison de Toile like a woman on fire. That had passed. Now came something worse. Emptiness. For all the planning, the strength, the flawless execution, this wasn't triumph. It felt like grief. She had loved Samuel once, with her whole heart. Not for his money or status, but for the way he used to look at her when she laughed. For the way he held her hand in the back of cabs. For the way he believed in her dreams. Before he stopped. And now, it was all gone. She blinked back tears, but one slipped out anyway, tracing down her cheek like a ghost. Elias noticed, offering her a handkerchief. He didn't say anything. He didn't need to. Arya dabbed her face gently, ashamed of the emotion. "I thought I'd feel better," she whispered. Elias finally spoke. "Closure doesn't always feel clean." She nodded slowly, her voice cracking. I thought I'd walk out of there feeling powerful, like I'd taken my life back." "You did? Then why does it hurt so much?" Elias looked at her, his expression soft. "Because you're not made of stone." The car pulled up to her temporary apartment, an upscale, discreet building on the Upper West Side where Elias had arranged for her to stay. Security, privacy, peace. She stepped out slowly, clutching her belly. Every movement felt heavier now. Inside, the apartment was dark, except for the soft glow of a lamp left on in the corner. Clean, elegant, sterile. She closed the door behind her, leaned against it, and broke. She slid down to the floor, hugging her knees, crying into the sleeve of that damn emerald dress. Her sobs were quiet but deep, years of swallowed pain pouring out. All the time she had defended Samuel to her friends. All the time she stayed quiet when she saw red flags. All the nights she'd eaten alone while he claimed he was working late. All the moments she'd thought, maybe if I try harder, he'll love me again. It had all been a lie. And now she was alone. Pregnant. Exhausted. Terrified. Her phone buzzed somewhere in her clutch. She ignored it. She stayed on the floor until her tears dried and her breathing slowed, until her back ached from the position and her unborn child nudged her gently from within. That tiny movement grounded her. This wasn't just about heartbreak. She wasn't just mourning a marriage. She was preparing for war, for motherhood, for independence, for a future she had to build from scratch. Wiping her face, Arya stood and made her way to the bathroom. She turned on the light, catching her reflection. The mascara had run. Her lips were pale. Her eyes were swollen. But beneath all that, she saw someone else, someone new. She saw a survivor. She peeled off the dress carefully, draping it over the chair. The heels were kicked aside. Her body ached in places she hadn't noticed before. She ran a warm bath and sank into it slowly, letting the water wrap around her like a bandage. For a few moments there was nothing but silence. Soft candlelight. Steam. And then, softly, she began to talk to her baby. "I'm sorry," she said, voice barely above a whisper. "I didn't want to bring you into this kind of mess. I wanted better." The baby kicked again. She smiled through the last of her tears. "But I promise, we're gonna be okay. I'll protect you. I'll fight for you. We'll have peace. I don't know how yet, but I'll find the way." When the bath grew cold, she climbed out, wrapped herself in a towel, and stood in front of the mirror again, still Arya Monroe. But no longer anyone's wife, only someone's mother. And that, she realized, meant everything. She lay in bed that night, not as a woman broken, but as a woman healing. Her dreams were scattered, blurry. Faces she once loved, words she wished she'd never heard. But when the morning sun crept through the curtains, Arya opened her eyes not with fear, but with resolve. It was a new day, and she wasn't done yet. Arya Monroe's story didn't begin in a small New York apartment with dreams of opening a bistro. It didn't even begin when she met Samuel Grant. It began long before that, in a world where wealth wasn't earned, but inherited. where names opened doors and power was passed down like family silver. Her real name? Aria Moreau Kensington. Yes, that Kensington. Daughter of Isabel Kensington, heiress to the Kensington-Remy dynasty, a European conglomerate that quietly owned everything from international shipping ports to luxury hotels in 26 countries. Her father, Alaric Moreau, was a renowned art dealer who had spent half his life curating rare collections for royal families and museums. Together, her parents had created an empire that spanned continents and collected royalty at their dinner table. But Aria never wanted any of it. After her mother died in a plane crash when Aria was 16, the entire empire was supposed to be hers. Yet she fled. Fled the marble estates, fled the expectations, fled the headlines that called her the last Kensington Rose. She changed her name, disappeared into culinary school under scholarship, never revealing her identity, never cashing the checks from her family's trust fund, never calling her father again. She didn't want to be a Kensington, she wanted to be herself. So she scrubbed dishes in tiny restaurants, slept in shared apartments, built a name for herself, not with money, but with flavor. Every review she earned, every compliment, every standing ovation at her food tastings, those were hers. When she met Samuel Grant, she saw someone else who had built his empire from nothing. She thought they were alike. She was wrong. And now, after all the heartbreak and betrayal, the time had come for her to remember who she really was. Not just a woman scorned, but a woman born to reign. It started with a phone call. 3 days after the Maison d'Étoile confrontation, Aria stood in front of her bedroom window, sipping herbal tea. The morning was calm, birds chattering outside her temporary Upper West Side apartment, but her thoughts weren't peaceful. They circled around lawyers, custody papers, the future. Her phone buzzed. The name made her freeze. Lucienne Remy, her grandmother. She hadn't spoken to Lucienne in nearly a decade, not since she vanished from their lives and rejected the Kensington legacy. Aria stared at the screen, and then answered. Aria, Lucienne's voice still carried that aristocratic lilt. You've made headlines. Aria closed her eyes. Of course I have. I assume the man you left is the same one you once told me was different. He was, until he wasn't. Lucienne didn't offer pity. So, you've remembered who you are. Aria's silence was answer enough. We watched from afar, Lucienne continued. Your father and I, we didn't interfere. He said you had to fall in order to rise. I didn't fall, Aria said quietly. I just chose a different path. You were never meant for silence, darling. You are a Kensington. You were born with a throne under your feet and fire in your blood. I was born a person, Aria replied. The throne was yours. I wanted peace. And did he give you that? Aria didn't respond. After a moment, Lucienne softened. The board is requesting your presence. What board? The family trust board. You're still legally tied to it. You're also the majority shareholder now. Isabel's inheritance became yours the day you turned 28. I didn't touch it, Aria said. I never will. Lucienne chuckled. You already have. Aria frowned. What? Do you think Elias Knight helps people for free? He's your godfather, Aria. Did you forget? The pieces snapped together so fast they nearly made her dizzy. Elias Knight, the most elusive man in finance, her mother's oldest friend, the man who gave her that quiet promise years ago after tasting her food. If you ever need a favor, I owe you one. He wasn't just an ally, he was family. Lucienne's voice became clearer. You were never weak, you just forgot how powerful you already were. And with that the call ended. Aria stood frozen, her tea cooling in her hands. It all made sense now. The way Elias moved, the speed at which he'd bought out Ember's investors, the way Maison d'Étoile became his overnight. He hadn't done it as a friend. He had done it as a guardian. She opened her laptop, something she hadn't done in days, and typed her name, not Monroe, but Kensington, into a private encrypted server she hadn't accessed since she was 19. And there it was, the trust, the holdings, the legacy, untouched. Waiting. She clicked once, and everything was unlocked. Tears welled up, not from pain, but from realization. She had never been alone. She had just chosen silence. But now, the silence was over. It was time the world remembered who she truly was. Not Samuel Grant's ex-wife, not a fallen chef, not a pregnant woman hiding from the storm. She was Aria Moreau Kensington, and she was done hiding. The old Aria would have packed her emotions in a box, tucked herself away, and stayed quiet. Not anymore. The woman who stood in the mirror 2 weeks later was not Samuel Grant's grieving wife. She wasn't the heartbroken chef who cried on the bathroom floor. She wasn't even the Kensington heiress who once ran from her birthright. She was all of it, and more, and she was ready to take the world by storm. It began with the wardrobe. Gone were the cozy sweaters and modest maternity dresses. In their place, structured blazers in bold emerald and navy, silk blouses tailored to hug her figure, luxury maternity wear designed to make her look like royalty, not someone coping with betrayal. She didn't hide her pregnancy. She flaunted it, a symbol of resilience, of life, of legacy. Her hair, once worn loose and soft, was now styled in sleek, commanding waves. Her makeup, polished, sharp, but still elegant. A smoky eye, a neutral gaze that said, "I dare you to underestimate me." She walked differently now, too. Shoulders back, chin up, every step echoing with purpose. But it wasn't just about clothes. It was about mindset. Arya had started her mornings with meditation, followed by short, powerful workouts designed for pregnancy. She reconnected with old contacts from her culinary days, former mentors, former students, people who had admired her long before Samuel came into the picture. She even called her father. It was awkward at first. Alaric Moreau had aged since she last saw him, his once jet-black hair now silver, his voice more cautious. But he was still her father, still the man who taught her about art, about passion, about legacy. "I should have called sooner," she told him. "You left to find yourself," he replied. "I just wish I could have watched you do it." They talked for hours. She told him everything. The marriage, the betrayal, the baby, and the future. Alaric offered her access to a private art space in Soho, originally reserved for collectors, but now transformed into her temporary command center. It was there, surrounded by priceless paintings and floor-to-ceiling windows, that Arya began building something new. A foundation, not just for herself, for women like her. Pregnant, betrayed, underestimated. She started a nonprofit, Second Flame, dedicated to helping single mothers and aspiring female entrepreneurs in crisis. She assembled a team. Lawyers, brand advisors, PR strategists, the kind of people Samuel once bragged about having on speed dial. She didn't need his dial anymore. She was the line. And then there was the media. Word had gotten out. Photos of her exit from Maison de Toile, arm in arm with Elias Knight, had gone viral. Blogs speculated. Fashion editors obsessed over the emerald dress. Talk shows debated whether her silent confrontation was the classiest takedown of the decade. Arya didn't issue a statement. She let the silence speak, until she was ready. One morning, she sat down for an exclusive interview, on her terms. It aired during prime time. Across from her sat renowned journalist Dana Keats, known for her no-nonsense tone and fierce loyalty to the truth. "Arya," Dana began, "you've remained mostly quiet in the evening at Maison de Toile. Tonight, you've chosen to speak. Why now?" Arya didn't blink. "Because I'm no longer surviving. I'm leading." Dana leaned in. "There's speculation about your family, that you're not just a chef, but connected to the Kensington Remy empire. Is that true?" Arya smiled softly. "Yes, my mother was Isabel Kensington. I walked away from that life to build something on my own. And now? Now I'm building something bigger, for women who feel like they don't have a voice, for mothers raising future giants, for anyone who ever thought they weren't enough." Dana nodded, visibly moved. "What about Samuel Grant? Will you be pressing charges, seeking public apology?" Arya paused. "I'm not interested in dragging anyone through the mud," she said, "but I will not protect someone who burned down our home just because he didn't want to build anymore. The truth has its own legs now." The clip went viral within hours, and just like that, Arya Kensington was reborn. Not as a scorned wife, not as a victim, but as a movement. 2 weeks after the interview, she made her first public appearance at the Women in Power Summit, walking into the Grand Hyatt ballroom in a white caped maternity gown and sky-high heels. Her entrance made headlines. She was no longer the shadow behind a successful man. She was the storm that taught him what power really looked like. The New York Philanthropy Gala was known for 3 things: elegance, power, and exposure. Held annually at the historic Crystal House in Midtown, it wasn't just a charity event, it was a declaration. The guest list was invitation only, the dress code brutally enforced, and every camera in the city pointed directly at its doors. This year, the gala was set to honor innovation in business and social impact. And for the first time, the organizers had extended a special keynote invitation to Aria Kensington. She hadn't attended a public gala since before her marriage. But this year she wasn't just attending, she was reclaiming her place. The red carpet outside was a frenzy. Paparazzi, publicists, celebrities, CEOs. Inside, champagne flowed like currency, and whispered conversations held more value than printed contracts. The chandeliers sparkled above like judgmental eyes. And then, she arrived, the doors opened with a hush, a pause. Aria stood at the entrance in a breathtaking floor-length black gown that shimmered like obsidian under the lights. The gown hugged her pregnant figure with elegance, draped in silk and grace. On her arm, Elias Knight, again. But this time not as protector, as partner. The cameras exploded in light. Reporters shouted, "Aria, is this your first public appearance since the scandal? Miss Kensington, how involved are you with Second Flame? Elias, are you two officially a couple?" They didn't respond, didn't need to. They simply walked, slow, poised, radiant, past every flash, every whisper, every gasp. Inside the ballroom, silence rippled like a wave. Samuel Grant had arrived early. He stood near the stage, dressed impeccably in a tuxedo, trying to network, trying to control the narrative. But when he saw her, everything stopped. He froze, mid-conversation with a Forbes journalist. His glass trembled slightly. She was here, and she looked untouchable. Delilah Vaughn wasn't with him anymore. After Maison d'Etoile, she had fled the city entirely, her PR team scrambling to repair the damage. Meanwhile, Samuel had spent the last month trying to pretend he hadn't been publicly dethroned. But now, the Queen had walked in. Aria's eyes locked with his. She didn't flinch. He smiled, nervously, almost apologetically, but she turned away before it fully formed. She wasn't here for him. She was here for everyone else. The host took the stage shortly after. "Ladies and gentlemen, tonight's keynote is a woman who has turned personal tragedy into a powerful mission. A visionary in the culinary world, and now a rising force in philanthropy. Please welcome Aria Kensington." Applause erupted. Samuel's claps were half-hearted. Aria walked to the podium with grace. She adjusted the mic, looked out into the sea of the city's most powerful people, and began. 2 years ago, I stood on a different kind of stage. One where I cooked, served, and dreamed of building something beautiful. I believed success meant support, that love would carry me through any storm. She paused, and then I lost it all. The room was silent. I lost a marriage I built from scratch. I lost trust. I lost nights of sleep wondering what I did wrong. She glanced briefly at Samuel. He looked down. But in that darkness, something unexpected happened. I found myself, not just the chef, not just the wife, but the woman. The leader, the mother. And I remembered my bloodline, not the Kensington name, but the spirit behind it. She straightened her shoulders. So I built again. I founded Second Flame to help women who've been dismissed, betrayed, underestimated. Because power is not in wealth, it's in rebuilding yourself when no one thinks you can. Applause grew stronger. Tonight, I accept this honor not because I want the spotlight, but because I want to pass it on. To the women in this room who've been told to shrink, to the mothers holding dreams while holding babies, you are not invisible. You are not broken. You are a fire waiting to rise. The standing ovation was thunderous. And Samuel, he remained seated. Because now, he was the one invisible. Elias joined Aria on stage briefly, placing a hand gently on her back. The gesture wasn't romantic, it was respectful, protective, proud. Later, as guests mingled and champagne refilled glasses, Samuel approached her. "Aria," he began, voice soft, "I just wanted to say you were incredible tonight." She turned to him, her face calm. "Thank you," she said. I've made a lot of mistakes," he added. "Yes," she replied. He swallowed. "I miss you. I miss us." Aria looked him in the eyes, deep, steady. "There is no us anymore, Samuel. You left that behind when you chose someone else in a room where I gave you everything. I didn't know you had this in you." "That's the thing," she said. "I always did. You just never cared to see it." She walked away, and this time, he didn't follow. It wasn't a headline that marked the end of Aria's story. It was a mourning, the kind of mourning that didn't scream success with champagne or spotlights but whispered it through stillness, safety, and peace. Aria stood on the balcony of her new brownstone in Brooklyn Heights. The Hudson River sparkled in the distance. The city stretched endlessly before her. She wore no makeup. Her hair was in a loose braid, her baby bump was now full, round, beautiful. She was weeks from delivery. And for the first time in years, she felt free. Not just from Samuel, from the silence, the second-guessing, the shrinking. She turned her phone over, ignoring the emails piling up. Endorsements, media offers, TV producers asking for docuseries rights. Everyone wanted a piece of the pregnant wife-turned-powerhouse. But Arya had already decided. Her story didn't belong to the public anymore. It belonged to her and her child. Still, one final chapter remained. She sat at her desk, pen in hand, and began writing, not to the world, but to her unborn child. My love, by the time you read this, the world will know me for 100 things. A chef, a Kensington, a scandal, a storm. But I want you to know the truth. I wasn't always strong. There were nights I cried so hard I thought I'd break. There were mornings I woke up afraid of facing myself in the mirror. I let people take pieces of me for too long, thinking that if I gave enough, they'd stay. They didn't, but you stayed. You grew inside me when everything else was falling apart. You kicked when I doubted myself. You reminded me that I wasn't just a woman who had lost something. I was a woman about to create something brand new. You saved me, and I promised to spend the rest of my life protecting you, teaching you, and reminding you of who you come from. A woman who doesn't run anymore. A woman who doesn't beg. A woman who builds. She closed the letter, sealed it, and placed it in a small box labeled, "For when you're ready." Later that afternoon, she met Elias for coffee at a small hidden garden cafe. No media, no bodyguards. Just two people who had survived the storm together. Will you ever go back? He asked gently. She smirked. Not in this lifetime. I meant the kitchen. Arya smiled. I never left it, she said, but I'm not going back to someone else's kitchen. I'm building my own. A new brand, new recipes, no compromise. He nodded with approval. You always were the fire, and you always knew, she said, grateful. As they sat in quiet companionship, Arya realized something important. Her revenge wasn't in the headlines. It wasn't in the board takeovers, or the viral speeches, or the stares across ballrooms. It was in the peace. In the way she woke up without panic. In the way her voice didn't tremble anymore. In the way Samuel's name no longer made her flinch. Because true revenge isn't about making someone else hurt. It's about making yourself whole. That night, as the city glittered beneath a full moon, Arya stood in her nursery. Walls painted soft sage, bookshelves full, a mobile above the crib that danced with stars. She placed her hand over her belly. This is our kingdom now, she whispered, and no one's taking it from us. Somewhere across the city, Samuel Grant scrolled through photos of Arya at the gala, alone in his penthouse, stripped of his titles, his influence fading. The empire he thought he owned was now a ghost, and the woman he thought was just a chef, she was a queen, a quiet one, a dangerous one. A survivor. Her last words to the press, words now quoted on posters, podcasts, and painted murals, still echoed. Women are not fragile. We bend, we stretch, we burn, and then we rise, stronger, louder, unstoppable. Don't mistake our silence for weakness. Sometimes it's just the sound of us loading the next chapter. And just like that, her story wasn't just hers anymore. It was a warning, a call, a revolution.